And it's showtime. Welcome back. It's your boy here, Mr. Halpin, as well as our very own Miss Hall. I did invite her back. I know, gasp, shock. No one else wanted her, but I insisted she come back, so I'm really excited about it. All right, so let's get started, guys. Now,
I think you're screaming.
Am I screaming?
I think you're screaming.
See, I get so excited when I'm talking on video screen. I'm sorry, guys, if I am screaming. I'm just really excited to talk to you about this, okay? So right now, as always, let's go through the vocab words, just some of the major vocabulary terms that you need to know. So first of all, we got enlightenment. Now, the first paragraph, as you guys can see, is all about enlightenment, so we're about to go over this in about 2 seconds. We also got natural laws, John Locke, who is an extremely famous person that we're going to learn about in this chapter. We also have natural law, natural rights, social contract. We have Baron de Montesquieu. We have separation of powers. We have the Magna Carta, Parliament, the English Bill of Rights, Mayflower Compact, the American Revolution, my personal favorite person, Thomas Paine, also known as T-Paine. We got common sense, democracy, limited government, limited monarchy, self-government, legislature, compact, Declaration of Independence, and the Constitution.
Now, what's nice about this is we actually put the majority of the vocabulary words up at the top. However, that doesn't mean that you're limited to those vocabulary terms. But these are the main ones that you're going to find throughout the text. And typically we bold it, we highlight it. And if you see right afterwards, parentheses, typically that's the definition. If it's not as direct as that, sometimes it's just found, the definition's found within that sentence. Okay, so if you look back, you know, when you really want to dive into why we're the country we are today, you really actually have to go back in time, well before we were even a country. So, Halpin, why don't you take it away and discuss about some enlightenment?
Sweet. So, guys, like I told you before, enlightenment was a time period where people really questioned the way things were. They questioned, well, just because people believed that this was the reason things were happening, they said, well, maybe there's actually another reason it's happening. So right here, it first started with science. Specifically, Sir Isaac Newton's a really good example. He questioned gravity, and ultimately, he found out actually why it was happening. And they ultimately took that approach, and they started questioning the governments, different things like that. Now, these thinkers, they believed that there were natural laws that governed how people behaved, just as the laws of gravity could explain how objects move. These thinkers brought this reason to everything they studied, as I already said, and this became known as the Enlightenment. Ultimately, they're questioning tradition, they're questioning authority, and superstition. So again, it's just a time of questioning the way that things work.
Right, and I kind of like to look at that as, you know, the grass isn't green just because nature said, ha-ha, you're going to be green. There was an actual reason, a process as to why that grass was green. So I just usually think of that.
No, that makes, and that's I like that you added that, because again, it was just questioning the way things were, and I think that's a great example for that.
And anytime that you're talking about enlightenment, you always end up talking about those Enlightenment thinkers. And my personal favorite is John Locke. Now, John Locke was an extremely influential person way back then. I believe he was from the 1600s, but he actually believed that when everybody was born, they were a completely blank sheet of paper, that you became influenced by things that happened within your life. Okay. He questioned the church. He felt, you know, because keep in mind, the church made the laws pretty much back then. And he said, I don't think so. He felt that the kings shouldn't have the power that they have, and that he questioned the whole concept of divine rights, where the kings claimed that they got all their power from God. Now,
specifically, I want to jump in there really quick. He was saying too, instead of God, it's really people who give you the power. Correct.
Correct. Now, John Locke believed this. He believed in what was called social contract. And here's what that contract was. It wasn't something that was physically written down and you signed it, but it was the deal where typically the people kind of obey the ruler, sometimes giving some of their rights away. In return, the ruler protects the people. So it's a give and take, okay? So do you have anything to add about social contract?
Only thing I think you did a really good job explaining, the only thing I would add, if, for example, the ruler doesn't protect the people, he's going to say that the people shouldn't have to follow the ruler, correct? It's ultimately there's a give and there's a take there.
Right.
If one side doesn't live up to their end of the bargain, the other side shouldn't have to either.
In fact, and great point, because John Locke was a firm believer that it is an obligation, something required by the people. It's an obligation that if the ruler was basically abusing his power, taking away your rights, etc., that it is the people's obligation to rise up against the government. Okay? So that's kind of interesting. And you're going to see later on how this ties into some of our documents. Now, John Locke's also known for something called natural rights, the rights to life, liberty, and property. Now, it said if the ruler repeatedly violated the natural law, that's what I was talking about. If you notice this in the study guide down at that bottom of that paragraph, then the people had the right to overthrow the government. This is where we actually kind of can attach Locke to our document, the Declaration of Independence, because our founding fathers that were creating our nation, and of course the Declaration of Independence was basically it's a document stating to the world that we are now our own country. We put something in that document that basically says the same thing.
This is a way we'll get into a little bit more of this later. However, the way I always look at the Declaration of Independence, I look at it as the greatest breakup text in human history. Those people, they wanted to provide a reason that they were breaking up with them. It wasn't just we're separating, it's, oh no, let me tell you about why we have to separate from you, and we have perfectly reasonable justification for doing that.
And boy, did they list every single thing that they couldn't stand about the king.
All right, so let's move on to the next person, which I really enjoy learning about Baron de Montesquieu. I really enjoy the person who dresses up as Baron de Montesquieu.
Dresses up? It's Baron de Montesquieu.
Or when Baron de Montesquieu comes to time, when he comes in. I'm sorry. Jeez Louise. Always make those mistakes. Sorry, people. So right here, Baron de Montesquieu, he studied the different types of governments, and he came up with this idea known as the separation of powers. Basically, what this is saying is that we're going to divide up the government into multiple parts. Specifically, if you look right here, he's suggesting a legislative branch, which makes the laws. He's suggesting an executive branch, which enforces the laws, and a judicial branch, which interprets the laws. Now, for any of you government aficionados out there, this is how our government is separated into those three different branches. Now, the reason he suggested that we separate those branches, is to prevent one from becoming too powerful. You see, when we were under English rule, or Great Britain's rule, we had all that power was given almost exclusively to the king, and that led to abuses on our parts. So again, they did not want that to happen. That's why they divided the power. You want to add to that?
No, but I will give Montesquieu this credit in regards to, back then he actually traveled to all these different countries, kind of looked at how each government style worked. And then ended up picking his favorite style, which was the three branches. Now, he was in Parliament in France, so he was a French politician, and he had his own discrepancies with his own government, but this was his ideal method. And, of course, you can also say this is what our founding fathers looked at when coming up with our own Constitution. Now, the next little part says the English heritage and the impact of historic documents. Now, we've got a lot of documents that we're going to go into, so let me talk about the Magna Carta. Again, when we were creating our own country, we looked at different Enlightenment thinkers, we looked at different countries, we looked at different documents. We pulled out things that we agreed and we liked and said, oh, we'll take this and we'll get rid of that. So we were trying to make the best country possible. So the Magna Carta is one of those documents. It was actually 1215 when this document came out. And this was really the first document that limited the king's power. If you look back as to what it was, it basically limited the king by saying you just can't throw people into jail. You'd have to have trial by jury. And also, if you wanted to tax the people, you had to have your noblemen actually go in and approve that, or your parliament. So,
and when you say throw people in jail, it's really dealing with a trial by a jury, correct? So when you say trial by a jury, that just means that your peers are the ones who's judging you, not just the king judging you.
Correct, because I definitely would not want just a king or one person judging me.
And I wouldn't either. And there's nothing to say, especially the king lives a very different lifestyle than the average person does. He lives in wealth and luxury. He's not going to understand the reasons that a poor person is going through. So why would he be the one judging them?
Right, exactly. And you heard us say the word parliament. You know, in our U.S. government, our Congress they're the lawmakers, okay? In England, it's the parliament that are the lawmakers. So it kind of is interchangeable in a way when you're talking about that.
Okay, so our next one is the Mayflower Compact. Compact. The Mayflower Compact. Now, what this is a group of pilgrims who sailed across the Atlantic to establish a colony where they could worship freely. Because this group of people, they were persecuted for their beliefs, meaning they were kind of targeted. So ultimately, they sailed across the Atlantic, and when they got there, they had to figure out how were they going to govern themselves. And they wanted to establish a document stating how they were going to do this. So ultimately, they all signed the Mayflower Compact, which is really the first example in our country's history of self-government.
And technically, keep in mind, we weren't a country yet, but we still kind of look at it that it was on this land, so we always tie that to our country.
So I'm going to finish up this video real quick, guys. We got the English Bill of Rights. Now, the English Bill of Rights were established in the year 1689. Now, they safeguarded the rights of citizens, and they limited the king's power while establishing the supremacy of Parliament. Now, it is also listed the rights of the people. Now, there are certain rights that peoples had as a result of this document. First, freedom of speech. Secondly, the right to bear arms. This means to own guns. The right to petition the king. Basically, that's a formal letter that people will write. Also, it says they could not tax without the approval of Parliament. So again, people got a lot of rights as a result of this document, which is, again, the English Bill of Rights.
Okay. And next we're going to get to the American Revolution and Thomas Paine, which he loves T-Pain.
Better believe I do.
So, now, you want to go ahead and talk about this part?
I would love to, if that's all right with
Sure.
you. So again, the British Parliament started placing new taxes on colonies to help pay for defense. Now, the colonists, began to get really, really mad at this. And they started saying, no taxation without representation. And all this is saying, guys, is that if you're going to tax us, we should have a say in those taxes. And the people living in these colonies at the time, they had absolutely no say in it, which is really unfair, and that was their argument. Now, Parliament, on the other hand, they felt they were just too far away, so why should they even bother consulting them? Ultimately, the colonists protested, and they decided to declare independence from this country at the time, which is Great Britain, obviously. So by 1775, the fighting started between the colonists and Britain, and the American Revolution had begun. Now, this next character, as Ms. Hall already pointed out, is one of my favorite characters that we learn about throughout this entire course. His name's Thomas Paine, and I like to call him T-Paine. He wrote this book called Common Sense. Now, this book was super influential, and ultimately, it swayed a huge number of people to agree with the colonists that they too should declare their independence. So again, because there was a lot of people that were, well, maybe we shouldn't actually declare independence, and they read this book and they changed their mind.
You know what's interesting about Thomas Paine is that he was somebody that couldn't keep a job. He really wasn't very well educated.
No.
But by the end, he ended up writing this book in very simple, basic language that all the people could read and understand. Now, of course, there was some bias to it because he was putting in his experiences, but he was really able to get the people fired up because there were a lot of colonists that just weren't interested in breaking free from England. They just didn't want to go through that hassle.
Exactly. So again, he's super influential. Now, really quick at the bottom right here, guys, you're going to see a couple just key terms. Well, first one's democracy, and this is a government where the citizens hold the power. The next one is limited government, and this is that principle that a ruler or government is not all powerful.
In other words, the word, you just break that down, limited government. It's exactly as it sounds.
Mm-hmm. Next, we have limited monarchy. And this is basically saying that a monarch, which is a king or a queen, has to share power with the parliament. So it's not like just the king or queen have all the power there. The next one we have is self-government. Self-government is number 4 right here. And it's self-control without using a government. You want to expand upon that one a little bit?
Yes, that goes back to the Mayflower Compact.
Exactly.
Just imagine getting off a ship and realizing there's nothing there. There's no homes, there's no crops, there's nothing. What do we do? And they all of a sudden have to decide, okay, before we even get off the ship, we've got to make an agreement.
Exactly right. So our next one, number 5 right here, is legislator. Now, legislator is just a group of people that make laws. Now, how I remember this, and I think everyone remembers it a little differently, but it has the L in it right there, and I always associate in my head the L in legislator stands for laws.
Right. You have legislator or legislator, legislature, legislate, legislative. It's all tied together, making laws.
Laws, exactly right. So number 6 right here is compact. Now, if you guys remember, the Mayflower Compact is basically a group of people that came together and ultimately they decided how they were going to run the Mayflower Compact, run the area they were living in. And ultimately, all a compact is just an agreement between a group of people. Mm-hmm. So again, right there, Mayflower Compact, it was really an agreement between all those people. And the last one right here is Declaration of Independence. As we already explained to you guys, this is the greatest breakup letter in human, or breakup text in human history. It was a letter written to the world stating that the colonists didn't like the king or queen and stating that they were going to declare their own independence from that country, from England.
Yeah. So that's it.
All right. We look forward to seeing you guys on our next video.
Sounds good. Thank you.